So today I'm going to talk to you about neuromuscular junction. I felt a good place to start would be to talk about the components. To start, so we'll go ahead and look at the axon terminal, which is just here. And that's the end of the motor neuron. The synaptic knob, which is there. It looks like a knob, pretty easy to remember. The synaptic vesicles, they're filled with neurotransmitters. So those are the synaptic vesicles and the synaptic membrane. And within those vesicles are the neurotransmitters, and they are the chemical messengers. And here in the blue is the voltage-gated calcium ion channel. They open in response to voltage or action potential, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. The calcium ions, you can see here, are just free-floating at the moment. And the synaptic cleft is the open space between the synaptic knob and the sarcolemma. So the synaptic cleft is designated by the two red arrows, and that's your sarcolemma down here. You'll see that better in the next diagram. Now here are some more parts of the neurotransmitter junction associated more with the muscle fiber. The sarcolemma in the red there is the muscle fiber membrane, and then we have the chemical gated sodium ion channel, which is just down here, and sodium ions, which are in there. All right. So now we're going to look at the synaptic transmission at the neuromuscular junction. So to start, we have the action potential, which is there. The action potential is actually activated by the brain, and the brain is the primary motor cortex. The motor neuron travels down the spinal cord and synapse with another motor neuron from the nervous system. Then it reaches the muscle, which will start a cascade of events. So the neuromuscular junction is a chemical synapse formed by the contact between the motor neuron and the muscle fiber. So here's our action potential and our muscle fiber down there. At the neuromuscular junction, the motor neuron is able to transmit a signal to the muscle fiber, causing a muscle contraction. How this all begins is what I'm going to talk about. The action potential, boom, reaches the presynaptic terminal of a motor neuron. So here we are. It activates the voltage. In this case, it's calcium. Calcium channels are allowed to open and calcium ions enter the neuron. So our free-floating calcium ions are now going to enter after they've been activated by that action potential. The calcium ions then bind to sensor proteins on synaptic vessels, triggering vesicle fusion with the membrane, and subsequent neurotransmitters release from the motor neuron into the synaptic cleft. So the calcium ions here to these vesicles, which go to the membrane and then are released into the cleft, which the cleft is between the synaptic knob and the muscle fiber. So the motor neurons release acetylcholine, a small molecule neurotransmitter, which diffuses across the synaptic cleft. So you can see by this arrow, we're getting diffused across the synaptic cleft. And then it binds with nicotinic acetyloline receptors on the cell membrane of the muscle fiber, also known as the sarcolemma. So remember, the sarcolemma is in here, so it goes through the synaptic cleft and is now binding on the cell membrane of the muscle fiber. Then the receptors are ligand-gated ion channels, and they bind with the ACH to the receptor, and they can depolarize the muscle fiber, causing this cascade of events that eventually result in a muscle contraction. So I'm looking forward to seeing all the other videos on muscle contraction. This has been a little bit of a challenging chapter or module for me. All right, thank you guys. Please leave your feedback, comments, greatly appreciated.